Sometimes the most powerful ideas come when we're in an area, in a state of crisis. Let's go back to the 1940s. Viktor Frankl was born in Vienna in 1905. He was a brilliant neurologist and a thinker, but when the Nazis Yimach Shemam came to power, he and his family were unfortunately deported to concentration camps, to Auschwitz and to Dachau. Out of his entire family, only he and one sister survived. Now imagine this. The Nazis stripped the prisoners of literally everything, of their possessions, of their clothing, even their names. They took Viktor Frankl's most precious belonging, a manuscript containing years of his life's work, all of his research. And at that moment, everything he had ever built was gone. And yet, Viktor Frankl made a discovery that changed the course of psychology and maybe the way that we live our lives. He realized that there is one freedom that no one can ever take away: the freedom to choose how to respond. Even in Auschwitz, he began to study what was happening both to himself and to others. Two fellow inmates were ready to give up. They wanted to end their lives, and Viktor spoke with them. But he helped each of them rediscover their reason to live. One had a series of geography books that he hadn't finished writing. The other had a daughter who lived, abroad and loved him deeply. Each of them found a why, something that gave them meaning. And that meaning was what gave them the strength to be able to survive. After the war, Viktor Frankl rebuilt his life and he founded a new school of therapy called logotherapy, centered around this idea of what drives human beings most deeply is not pleasure, not power, but really the purpose, having the why. He captured it in his title of his very famous book, Man's Search for Meaning. And it's that same idea that Rav Jonathan Sacks, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, uses to explain a fascinating Rashi in this week's Parsha, Parsha Chayei. It's actually beautiful timing because this week around the world, on Monday, people learned in honor, in Zechut of Rav Sacks' Yahrzeit, and it was the Rav Sacks Global Day of Learning. It's particularly meaningful to learn an idea from him. Rashi, on the very first pasuk in this week's parsha, comments on the phrase "Elu Chayei Sarah." These were the years of Sarah's life. Rashi tells us that the Torah repeats it, even though the Torah, the pasuk had already told us that, in order to teach us that all of her years were equally good. Now, how could that possibly be? Let's take a quick little run through Sarah's life. Sarah's life was anything but easy. She was abducted twice. She faced years of infertility. Her servant, Hagar, had a child before she did. Her life was not an easy life. It was filled with a lot of emotional and physical struggles. So how could Rashi tell us that all of her years were equally good? And the same question comes up with Avraham. At the end of his life, the Torah describes that Avraham, when he died, so to speak, satisfied. But also, Avraham did not have a very simple life. He had so many tests, so many promises that he never saw fulfilled. So how do we understand these two major questions, both by Avraham and Sarah? And Rav Sacks gives such a powerful answer, and it connects right back to what Viktor Frankl's main idea. Both Avraham and Sarah lived with a deep sense of purpose. They understood that their lives were part of something much bigger. They were on a journey that was not just about them, but it was really the destiny of the Jewish people. That sense of why gave meaning to everything that they went through, even the challenges. Because when you live with a why, you can endure literally almost any how. And that's why Rashi can say that all of Sarah's years were good, because each one of her years was lived with purpose. And it's the same thing with Avraham. He was able to feel satisfaction at the end of his life because he knew he had lived a life of purpose. He had walked in B'derech Hashem, the path of Hashem, the path that Hashem had set out for him. As Rav Sacks writes, the search for meaning represents one of the deepest truths of the human condition. And now we can relate this very, very closely to a parenting takeaway. One of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is to help them find their why. So this Shabbat, I want to give a little challenge. Try asking at the table, very simply, what gives your life meaning? It's something that's very apropos for a middle schooler. They can start thinking about these things. What do you think Hashem puts you here to do? what are you most passionate about? Which is also a great way for us to get to know our children a little bit better if we don't necessarily know all these things. And even if we feel that we know them, this gives us a great opportunity to rehear some of their thoughts, some of their answers, and maybe as they're maturing, where they're holding. When children grow up with a clear sense of purpose, with this why that connects them to Hashem and to something that's way beyond themselves, they become so much more stronger and rooted in their belief and in their passion. If we can help our children discover that why early on, we'll have set them up for a life of real passionate avodat Hashem, of real simchat hachaim, and simcha in their avodat Hashem. And maybe, like Avraham and Sarah, we too will be able to look back and say, we also, every day, every year, every aspect of our life was good because we lived our mission. We took the first steps towards our family's future. Mir Hashem, we should all be zocha to have these great conversations, and I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.